in here, won't you play that funky clip? I was raised by bears and a rusty chainsaw.
So, what's your history with the band Cojumpendium? How did you join them?
So I was roommates with the mastermind behind it, Bora. Yeah, so I was roommates with him in college. He knew some friends of mine from high school, and they were looking for a place. So I'd met him before, like I was aware that he'd had this band in mind, and he had a bass player prior to me showing up, but said bass player got really busy with his own projects, and I had sort of just started playing bass maybe 6 months prior to actually doing any shows with them or rehearsing with them at all. And so it was kind of like he needed a filler for a 3-4 month period. And so I volunteered. He was very hesitant. I kind of had to prove myself. I think friends in our inner circle were kind of like, feeling sorry for me and just kind of convinced him to let me join. And so that was sort of the way that I got, quote unquote, invited in or volunteered myself in. And he was kind enough to let me play a couple of shows that I think went well. I remember he gave me tabs a few months prior, so I was actually able to listen to his songs and teach myself them and play them on tabs. And the parts that were too fast, he would, tell me, all right, just make sure you're hitting it, staying on tempo. So riffs that were too complicated, he was also very generous and understanding of my novice playing skills at the time. But yeah, I kind of just invited myself in when I knew he was looking for a new bass player.
I have to admit, as a guitar player, the Kojum songs are pretty hard to play, pretty fast.
Yes, he is an exceptional musician just in general. I believe he taught himself the bagpipes in something like a 2 or 3 week span just so he could play Happy Birthday to one of our friends in the dorms. Just a really talented guy, and it was good to play with him for a while. And on top of being roommates for 3 years, that was also a good time as well.
Okay, next question. How was your experience with Cojumpendium?
In a word, great. It was the first band that I'd ever played with. Like I said, I'd been playing bass for 6 months to a year, something like that. Not a very long time. And I remember on the very first rehearsal, because like I said, Bora gave me the tabs ahead of time. I had maybe a month or two to practice them along with the recordings. And so I go to the first rehearsal, and as a bass player, like, your rapport with the drummer is really important. Blake, an exceptional drummer. And I explicitly remember, we're going through 1 or 2 songs, and he's like, wow, you learned this better than our previous bass player. Not to knock the first guy. Like I said, he was busy with his other projects. As I understood it, he just didn't have time to sort of learn and get on the same page necessarily. So that was really cool to hear, because the camaraderie there was really great. Dressing up in the Mexican wrestling masks and capes and stuff is also a really fun experience to have had. And when I got my first job down here in Texas, I went to my interview. They did like some technical behavioral questions, and at lunch, my future boss at the time was like, all right, I have some specific topics on your resume that I want to discuss, because I had put bass player for a jazz metal band in my resume. And he was asking me very specific questions about that. He's like, so tell me about the band. And I got to like describe all this stuff, and it just added like another layer of, something to sort of discuss in an otherwise very professional setting. That first boss was super interested in it. So I guess
Did you get the job?
I'm sorry. Yes, I got that job. Yes. And so that was really cool to not just have it on my resume, not just experience it, in real time, but to be able to look back even now today I haven't told my kids about it, but to be able to say, yeah, Dad played in a jazz metal band in college where he wore Mexican wrestling masks and, shouted obscenities, so to speak, from time to time. So it was a great experience.
Crazy band.
Yes, very crazy. Can't say enough good things about my brief time there. It was really awesome.
When you were in the band, was the song 5/4 already made or no?
I don't know if that was the name of it. I can remember at a show I had 4 lines in a song that I had to kind of rap.
Oh, yeah, it's that song.
That's it. That's the name of the track. Okay, yeah. So yes, that song was out. I remember, like, at the time not really caring for the lyrics. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And then a second later, I was like, oh, that's kind of the point. So I did one show where I had to sing those lines, but on the recording, because I do remember hearing a recording of that once upon a time. And yeah, that's Matt on the recording that I'd heard.
Just to know if the lyrics changed. In the song, the lyrics that ended up in the final, the ones that Matt sings, is Udabn here, won't you play the funky clip? I was raised by bears and a
rusty chainsaw. I
get a boner.
A boner, sorry. Every time I hear a broken seesaw. Yes, exactly. Same lyrics.
Same lyrics, nothing changed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there's no reason to upgrade any type of lyrical masterpiece as the Udabn.
Cojumpendium does perfect lyrics. I love them.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely.
So, can you give me a specific amount of time that you performed with Cojumpendium?
I think 4 months. We'll say 4 months, I think, is safe. I remember it was late September. We had a show in downtown Detroit for a competition, some sort of tournament, Battle of the Bands competition thing. And
I heard about that.
Yeah, I remember in the end, Cojumpendium ended up getting, I believe, second or third. Maybe they made it to the final day. Fourth, thank you, fourth. Okay, I remember them making it to the final day, and by the time the final show happened, I was no longer the bass player, but I remember going to that event. So yes, I was there for the very first one, which I believe was in the fall. The final show was in the spring sometime, and in that amount of time, I Matt had transitioned, or Udabn had transitioned into being the bass player. So I want to say it was about a 4-month span, and I think I remember them all, probably 4 shows with them, 4 to 5 shows, I think, something like that.
So big question here. It's the question that a lot of people have been wondering, because Cojumpendium is a band full of lost media that needs to be found, CDs, old EPs that are lost to time, that only people from back then have.
Oh, that is too bad. I don't think I have any recordings or anything of that nature.
So about some unreleased tracks, do you know anything about some unreleased tracks that didn't end up in the final album? Like, just so you know, the songs that ended up releasing that we know is Cell, Forlom, Reverse Mullet, Jabberwocky, M54, Moonwaltz, which is a new song, Tap Tap Tap, Puzzle Dust, and Pluto, which is another new song.
I was going to say Moonwaltz and Pluto are the only ones that do not sound familiar. The only thing I could tell you as far as sort of unreleased stuff, they did play a show, I believe, at the Blind Pig in Ann Arbor. It's a cover, so I think maybe that's why they never released it. It was a cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
We have that. Matt sent us
Tears of Fears. Okay, yeah, Tears for Fears. They did that really well. Oh, and they also did Over the Hills, Zeppelin's.
Yeah.
They did
but like unreleased, I mean, like there are 4 unreleased songs we know are unreleased. The first one is Breast Men. It was mentioned in the track list of their first CD.
Okay.
A song called How, Mom Ref, and 7/4. Do you know anything about these 4 tracks?
No, I none of those are ringing a bell. How might does kind of sound familiar, but I can, if it does, I can almost guarantee I didn't play it ever. Bora may have been sort of peripherally working on it, and it might have been like on the list of tabs that he sent me, and he said, "Don't worry about that one. We're not doing it," because the of the songs you mentioned, "Puzzled Us," "Jabberwocky," "Forlom," "Tap Tap Tap," and "Reverse Mullet." Those are the 5 that like stuck in my head, because when you know Bora and you hear those titles, it makes perfect sense. So it's something that's gonna remain in one's consciousness for a while.
So this is a question that kind of invalidates, but I was gonna ask if you still have any shirts, demos, images, or videos from back then.
Oh, shirts for sure.
You have shirts?
I have a shirt. Yeah,
Ooh.
You're not getting it. I have one Udabn the Feared shirt. Well, maybe I'll be nice. I don't wear it anymore, but I do have an Udabn the Feared shirt. I got one. I did have.
We know you had a Lawrence shirt and a Captain No shirt. We've seen photos of you wearing it.
Oh, I did? Okay. Because I was going to say I had a. Yes, I definitely had a Lawrence shirt. I don't remember having a Captain No, but I'll take your word that I did. But I definitely still have my Udabn the Feared shirt, no doubt. If I'm going to be honest, I remember trying on all of them. And the only reason I kept Udabn is because I was Udabn at the time. Udabn's shirt just so happened, and maybe this is just me, but it was the least comfortable. Lawrence, the only reason I kept that one was, well, I did like his alternate ego, Octavus, the River of Lost Souls, but the shirt was the most comfortable. So yeah, those are the odd memories I didn't realize I had regarding Cojumpendium apparel. But yes, I can definitely confirm I still have a Udabn the Feared shirt. Yeah.
I was gonna ask if there are any photos or footage of you as Udabn, because we actually don't know which shows you played. But now that you said the suit photos, we know that that was the only photo we know that it's you as a Udabn.
I believe that would be the only one. So if there are photos from that, whatever the band competition was, the Battle of the Bands that we did, if there are photos from that specific show, that'd be me. And as far as the other shows we did, I don't think they were necessarily very high profile gigs, to say the least. So I would imagine outside of that photo shoot in the suits, there's probably not much other video footage of me playing with those guys.
We actually knew that you were in the Battle of the Bands, but unfortunately, we only have emergenza footage of Matt and the first Udabn. We don't have yours. So, do you know anything about the first Udabn the band had, like his name or anything?
His name was Trael Lewis.
What do we play?
That's a very good question. Take that one to your mamas.
I'm pretty sure that was him. And I recall, because he came over our house once early on when Bora was, sort of just getting everything started. And I remember the first time I saw him, I went into Bora's room because Bora was protective about everything in his room, and then his strawberry quick mix in the fridge. And so every time, like almost anything else, you could just Bora was just whatever about. But I would always have to ask him explicitly if I could borrow some strawberry quick. So I go in his room and I open the door, and he was visibly jolted and not pleased with me. He never really got mad. He was just far too chill to ever do that. But I asked him for strawberry quick, and he shooed me out of the room really quick. And that was the first time I ever saw Trael. He was a very fit African-American gentleman who was super nice. You might look at him and think oh gosh, this guy's super intimidating. But the second he opens his mouth, the nicest guy you ever with, from my recollection. But yeah, no, he was really cool. Good bass player. I remember playing a couple of shows and he was there, and most people would sort of nod their head to the guitar part or watch Bora singing or playing whatever instrument he was playing. Trael was always mimicking my parts. Like he was nodding his head to whatever the riff is that I was playing. Like you could tell he still knew what the bass line was, even a month or two after he'd stopped playing with the band. So, no, yeah, a really nice guy and very talented musician as well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the band he was in college was God's Weapon, but I don't know anything beyond that. I don't believe I ever went to any of their shows or anything like that. But yeah, that was his name. At least I don't know. I'm like 40 now, so unless my memory is like super whacked out, then I'm unaware of it. I could be completely mistaken, but that's my recollection. Yeah.
We were just looking for any names. Any names is awesome because we have
Okay.
no idea who that guy was. So, what was your favorite song to play live?
Oh man, that's a good question. Okay. All right. So to be honest, obviously I can list those 5 songs off. I do recall, I don't recall exactly the one. Maybe you can help me with it. There was one with, in my opinion, as I was described the band, it was a jazz metal band. So there is one track that has a specific jazz interlude. I can hear the bass line in my head, and I really remember playing that, and that was one of the first times that Blake and I like clicked, because the transition into it is not abrupt, but it has a nice build up. But I don't think
did it have a saxophone in the song, like in the middle?
Yes.
Oh, it's
Or no,
Cell.
it had
Cell.
Cell. That sounds right. Okay. The bass line, I'll embarrass myself here, but it was like do 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 do, and then repeated that 2 or 3 times. And I remember really enjoying playing that, because that was when I felt like, oh, I'm like a bass player now. This is like a walking bass line that I'm actually a part of, and I'm syncing up with the drummer who's got like a cool cymbals thing going. So that was probably my favorite one, to play. And I did like playing Puzzle Dust just because that one, at least the way it starts, it's the one where, like, anytime you just have the bass line syncing exactly with the kick drum, and it's just like the first 2 or 3 measures, but it sets the tone really well, I always thought. So yeah, I think those 2 probably more so. Cell, or whatever the first track was that's escaping my head right now, but that was a really cool one to play, in my opinion.
Do you have any interesting inside info about the band?
Interesting insight info. But you did, actually, it's funny because you did bring up Tally Hall earlier, and I remember I was out, I don't remember where I was, but I got a call from Bora, who had always had sort of weird hobbies at any given moment throughout my 3 years living with him. And he called me up and he said, hey, Tally Hall is having a show, and Zubin, the bass player, I don't know if he broke a string or his pickup went out. Basically, his bass broke and he needed a bass. And I played, obviously. My bass was blue, which was like the color scheme for Zubin at the time, maybe still. And so Bora's like, yeah, they need to borrow your bass. And I'm like, cool, but I'm out. I can be there in whatever, 10, 15 minutes to unlock the door. He's like, no, don't worry. They already have it. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I picked the lock on your door and I gave them your bass. I was like, oh, I guess thanks for letting me know. And it all turned out fine. Returned the bass perfectly great, all in one piece. They gave me a case of wine, actually, as a thank you, because I think he ended up using it for a couple of shows, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was my sort of run-in with Tally Hall at the time. And we used to, I do remember Rob Cantor coming over to our place, actually, to work with Bora on some of the production stuff our senior year of college. Yeah. I explicitly remember when Bora was I don't know if he was auditioning drummers necessarily, but I do remember him talking to me about looking for members of his band, and he's like, yeah, and I met up with this drummer and something, and I told him to just like sort of put in an awesome fill here at this part. And he said it was so cool. He had this double kick drum that like really made it sound awesome. And so Bora that was sort of Bora's way, as I understood it, of him saying, yeah, this guy's actually better than me at this instrument. So zero surprise there. Not that Bora, I've heard him play drums, also a great drummer. But I do explicitly recall Blake, if I'm not mistaken, was his name. Blake was really good. Yeah, zero surprise there that he stuck with that arrangement.
The drum arrangements are really good, especially the drum solo in Puzzle Dust, if you remember.
Yeah, okay. That might have been the one that Bora specifically had expressed his impression of and was very impressed by, I should say. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Bora started calling Matt the new Udabn because he was the last one.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did call him Udabn. That was funny. And then I don't know how well it stuck, but I like to give myself credit because the guitar player and the drummer, Jacob and Blake was their name. And I think maybe for the first couple of times I met him, I didn't know which one was which. So I just started like saying Blakeup just as a general thing to refer to both of them because I didn't necessarily know who was who when I first met them. And that stuck for at least a good couple of months. Not sure if it still remains, but I remember when we were introducing Udabn to Jacob and Blakeup, I introduced them as Blakeup, and I remember them awkwardly having to explain what all that was. So yes, I do remember Udabn as I was transitioning him over to. I think I taught him, or I helped him through like one or two like riffs for a very brief period of time, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that was at that time. I do remember Bora kind of doing a documentary. It might have been something he did for class. I mean, obviously I don't have it, but I remember he himself interviewing me. He asked me the same first question, like, how did you hear about the band?
Oh, I know. We know that video. It's called What is Cojumpendium?
Oh, yeah. That was it. Okay. All right. So no, I guess then no new insights, but that would be the closest thing I could think of.
It's fine. Okay. It said because only Jacob appeared in the video in this interview thing, but it's cool to know that you were out fast.
Oh, for sure. I remember doing my interview and like thinking that I was being funny, and then I saw Jacob's responses to the questions, and I was like, oh, this is how you be funny.
Cojumpendium is when you're having a dream where you really have to go to the bathroom, and you do, and you wake up and you've pissed yourself.
Yeah. So yeah, Jacob. It's probably better that it was that way because I remember looking back on my responses thinking they were lame. And yeah. So no, the world did you guys a favor there by not having any footage of me in that original interview.